I never meant to listen. My name is Hannah Ellis, and I was raised to mind my manners, not eavesdrop. But that night, I didn't move. Not when I heard my name, not even when my father's voice lowered, like it always did when something cruel was about to be said with a smile. He thought I'd already left for the hardware store. My sister, Chloe, was still there, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. I stood in the hallway, half behind the coat closet door, holding my breath. Once she's out, Dad said, we'll change the locks. Start shifting everything slowly, utilities, the deed, if we can work it. She'll throw a fit, but it won't stand in court if it looks like family business. Chloe gave a soft laugh. She'll cry first, then call a lawyer. By then, he replied, the narrative's already ours. That word, narrative, not true, not facts, just a version. I didn't drop the keys in my hand. I didn't stumble or gasp. I stayed frozen, spine straight against the wall, listening to the rest. When to switch out the Wi-Fi, how to handle utilities, how to box up my things and say they just thought I'd moved out. No one sounded angry, no raised voices, just calm, coordinated theft. It wasn't a family conversation, it was strategy. When the recording ended, I had it saved in 3 separate files, one on my phone, one in the cloud, one on a drive hidden inside a sunglasses case. My best friend Megan picked me up 20 minutes later. By then, I'd already emailed the audio to our attorney, Janet, and forwarded a copy to myself under a fake subject line, April grocery list. Less than an hour later, Megan and I sat outside the courthouse, her fingers clutching mine tightly. Janet, fierce and composed in navy slacks and a wool coat, walked up with a thumb drive and a signed emergency motion. It took 2 hours for the judge to review it. When we walked back into the daylight, the relief didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow, like a bell that had cracked down the side, but never shattered. That night, Megan poured me tea I couldn't drink. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not even when the room was completely still. I logged into the online forum I'd joined months ago, one I'd never posted on, just read in the dark after bad phone calls or longer silences. It was full of women like me, women who had their names removed from things quietly, who were gaslit about mortgages they'd paid, bank accounts they'd opened, houses they had cleaned and paid off, but somehow never owned. I wrote out the story with no names, no cities, just facts, just the recording. By morning, it had over 300 comments. My mom did this to my aunt. I thought I was crazy. They started with the Wi-Fi too. I didn't answer all of them. I didn't need to. Just seeing the echoes reminded me. I was not unlovable. I was being removed. That afternoon, a reporter from a Denver paper messaged me directly. Hi, Hannah. I saw your post in the financial abuse forum. We're doing a series on family property manipulation. Would you be willing to talk, even anonymously? I didn't answer, but I didn't delete it either. By sunset, they had heard. My father, Charles Ellis, got a call from an old business partner asking if that was his daughter in the thread about he didn't respond, just hung up. Chloe texted me later that night. One word. Why? I didn't write back. 2 days later, someone forwarded me the message. Chloe had been quietly removed from the speaker list for a leadership conference in her name no longer appeared to her. Even alleged family fraud wasn't good PR. That night, I stood at Megan's balcony and watched the sky go quiet over the city. My laptop my documents, case. I read it 3 times. Let the silence inside me soak in it. This is mine, I whispered. Not the house, not the motion, the story. Because for so long it was like I didn't exist, just a version of me they narrated, manipulated, and removed whenever I didn't fit. But now, this was mine. The courthouse looked the same. Stone walls, sharp echoes, those cold benches I used to sit on during my summer internship. But I wasn't the same woman walking through those doors. Janet met me out front, holding 2 manila folders tucked under her arm. her blazer so crisp it looked like it could cut glass. Megan was right behind her, a notepad clutched in one hand. She wasn't here to speak, she was here to witness, to balance the memory of every time someone told me I was imagining it. Inside, I pressed my hands together, fingers locked to keep them from shaking. I reminded myself, you are not trembling, you are not afraid, you are ready. We waited outside the courtroom until the bailiff called our case. My father sat at the defense table, wearing a suit he never used to wear. The kind that said, approachable businessman, not dad. Chloe sat beside him, scrolling her phone with her mouth set in something that wasn't quite a frown. My mother, Karen, was on the opposite side of the room. She wore her soft gray scarf like armor, her posture brittle and tight. The judge, a woman with quiet authority, called the room to order. Janet started. No long introduction, just a presentation of facts, dates, bank statements, scanned deeds. Then the audio. The whole courtroom went still. She'll cry first. By then, the narrative's ours. Every word played, clean and cold. The judge turned to my father. Mr. Ellis, would you like to respond? He stood slowly, like this was a board meeting and not a hearing about whether or not he'd committed fraud against his daughter. We supported Hannah for years, he said. This is all a misunderstanding. We were trying to protect family assets. Janet cut in calmly. Mr. Ellis, do you deny submitting false ownership documents to Midwestern Bank? I deny any criminal intent, he replied. If she had just listened, none of this would have happened. His voice caught on that last sentence. I watched the judge glance up over her glasses. Just a flicker of doubt. Then it was Chloe's turn. She crossed her legs, adjusted her scarf like she was about to give a speech. I was helping organize things. The house was always meant to be a family asset. Hannah doesn't even like entertaining. It's not like she used that office anyway. Janet held up a printout. A photo of Chloe holding a box. My box, labeled with her initials. The side is marked HE Office Files. The judge narrowed her eyes. You believe the office was yours? Chloe looked down. It felt like shared responsibility. You're not on the deed, correct? Silence. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand slowly, took the oath, sat, and breathed. I bought that house, I said. I made every mortgage payment, alone. My father and sister entered it without my knowledge or permission. My mother packed my things while I was at work. I paused. Let the silence stretch. When I confronted them, they told me I was unstable. They called it a misunderstanding. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. They didn't just try to take my home. They tried to erase the woman who built it. There was no noise in the courtroom when I finished. Even the papers weren't rustling. The judge looked down at the folder in front of her, then back up. This court finds sufficient evidence that Ms. Ellis is the sole legal owner of the property. The temporary restraining order is upheld. The court will open an inquiry into potential financial misconduct. My father inhaled, quick and sharp. My mother didn't meet my eyes. Chloe's fists tightened in her lap. I didn't smile. Not in that room. Not yet. Outside, in the sharp midday light, a reporter caught up with me. Ms. Ellis, do you consider this justice? I looked right into her lens. Justice, I said, is knowing I never have to explain myself to them again. But the house didn't feel like mine yet. The key turned with more resistance than I remembered. Like, even the lock wasn't sure it wanted me back. Inside, the smell had changed. The faint eucalyptus I used to love was gone, replaced by synthetic lavender, the kind my mother always used in her guest room. The curtains were different, pale blue instead of cream, the kind of stiff panels that didn't sway in the breeze like mine used to. The floor was quieter. I don't know how floors grow quiet, but mine had. Like it had grown used to unfamiliar footsteps and wasn't ready to recognize mine. I dropped my bag at the door and just stood there. Then I opened the drawers, one by one. The bookshelf held magazines I never read. The mantel had a vase I never bought. There were candles I'd never picked, towels I'd never folded. I packed them slowly, methodically, labeling each box theirs. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. This space wasn't broken. It was just hijacked. In the kitchen, under the silverware tray, I found an envelope. My name, written in Chloe's handwriting. Inside, a single page. You'll understand someday. Family decisions are complex. You were always headstrong, but we meant well. This was about preserving what matters. You'll see that one day. No apology, just her version. I stepped outside, grabbed the fire pit cover, struck a match, and burned it. The flame moved fast, too fast, and for a second I could almost hear her words disappearing into smoke. I understand perfectly, I whispered, not to her, to the quiet. That weekend, I walked across the lawn to the neighbor's house. Mrs. Kavanaugh, cardigan-wearing and kind, answered the door. I brought cookies, I said, holding out a tray, and maybe just wanted to say thank you. She invited me in without hesitation. We sat at her kitchen table, sipping weak tea, the kind I'd hated as a kid, but now found oddly comforting. She told me they'd always felt something was off, that my family acted entitled, like the house was theirs before it ever was mine. We didn't want to get in the middle, she said gently, but I'm glad you stood up. I walked back home, arms empty, heart a little fuller. A place can feel like home again, even if you have to fight to reclaim it. On Monday morning, Janet called me. Her voice was sharp but steady, like someone who's read too many legal briefs to be surprised anymore. The state's financial crimes unit is moving forward, she said. They've seen the forged applications. If it connects directly to your father, there could be formal charges. I stood barefoot in my living room, pacing over the hardwood that still held faint scratches from moving day years ago. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I'm not after revenge, I told her. I just want it recorded. I want the truth to have a timestamp. That week, I started decorating the house for Thanksgiving. It was a ritual I'd skipped the last few years. Too busy, too exhausted, too unsure if I'd be the only one at the table. But this year, I wanted the garland back. I wanted the wreath on the door, the one with orange berries and little copper bells that jingled when the wind hit just right. I added photographs, not of family by blood, but of Megan, of Mrs. Kavanaugh. A snapshot of Janet in the courthouse parking lot, her blazer half unbuttoned and her face halfway to a laugh. I slid the photos into frames and placed them on bookshelves, windowsills, and the entry table by the stairs. Each frame was a correction, a quiet declaration of who belonged in this story. Just before dusk on Wednesday, I stepped onto the porch to water the potted mums, and that's when I saw it. A manila envelope. No return address. Inside was a photo of my childhood bedroom. Same floral comforter, same polka-dotted curtains. But now a red X had been drawn across the bed. I stood there for a long time, the photo balanced in my hands. It didn't scare me, not exactly, but it rattled something deep. The bed I used to sleep in. The one where I first read Little Women, where I learned how to French braid, where I cried the night my college rejection letter came. And now it was marked like a crime scene. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. The next morning, I brought it to the station, filed a report, explained everything, the envelope, the photo, what it meant, even if it wasn't technically a threat. The officer nodded as he typed. Without a sender or a direct message, he said, there's not much we can do. It could just be symbolic, he added kindly. I nodded. I know, I said. That's why it's worse. Later that week, while stringing lights across the porch railing, I heard a car pull up, engine still warm, tires whispering against the curb. It was Chloe. No warning, no message. Just her standing there, coat zipped, clutching her purse like it might hold something that mattered. I was nearby, she said. I didn't answer. Thought maybe we could talk. I looked at her for a moment, then stepped aside just enough for her to pass. Not an invitation, just space. She moved slowly, scanning the walls like they might judge her. Her gaze paused at the photo of me and Megan at the courthouse, then drifted to the Polaroid of me and Mrs. Kavanaugh from last Thursday. She sat on the edge of the couch, tense, still holding her purse. "It's quiet in here," she said. "Most peace is," I replied. She twisted the strap of her bag. "I'm not proud of how things happened," she said. "None of us expected it to get legal." I sat down across from her, arms crossed. "You're not here for me," I said. "You're here to control the story, to soften it before it spreads any further." She blinked, offended, but only for a moment. "You think that's all I care about?" "No," I said. "I think you care very much about being perceived as the better daughter." Silence stretched between us. She exhaled slowly. "Maybe I was jealous," she said. "Maybe I didn't think you deserved the house." "There it is," I whispered. She looked away. "That doesn't mean I wanted it to go this far." "But it did," I said, voice low, "and you let it." She opened her mouth again, then closed it. Her hands were shaking now. I leaned forward slightly. "You don't get to rewrite your role just because I survived it." She left 10 minutes later. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. That night, I checked my mailbox again. A cream-colored envelope. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. Inside was a generic winter card. Snow-covered trees. Soft glow of a house in the background. And beneath it, in her careful cursive, "Wishing you clarity and peace. From Mom." Tucked inside the fold was a small printed quote. "Forgiveness is the scent the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it." There was no apology, no admission, just that quote. Like forgiveness was something fragile I was expected to offer up because it made them feel better. I didn't respond. Not out of hate, not even bitterness, because forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't always require reconnection. Some people apologize to unburden themselves, not to heal what they broke. A few days later, Megan and I visited the downtown holiday market. Snow collected in little flurries along the roof lines. Pine and cinnamon hung in the air. Someone sold roasted chestnuts and handed out cider in paper cups with reindeer doodles. We stopped at a booth selling handmade mugs. Megan picked one up, its handle slightly crooked. "You never spoke publicly," she said softly. "I didn't need to," I replied. She nodded. "Sometimes survival's the louder message." I smiled, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, but is still real. The silence I'd chosen wasn't weakness, it was clarity. That weekend, I installed a new security system. One I picked, one I tested. I changed every lock, reprogrammed the thermostat, and set new entry codes. Then I replaced the curtains. The ones they had hung, blue and rigid, gone. I brought back soft cream linens, the ones I'd hemmed myself that summer when I thought I'd be living there forever. I added stained glass film to the front windows, amber, teal, and one single triangle of red. When the light hit just right, it looked like sunrise, even at dusk. Finally, I rolled up the old rug in the living room. It was the last thing they'd left behind. Underneath, the floor was scratched and imperfect, but strong. Mine. I stood barefoot on that wood, breathing in the quiet. Not closure, but peace. On Christmas morning, the sky outside was soft gray, like powdered sugar had been sifted over the whole neighborhood. I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, wrapped in the knitted blanket Megan gave me the year she left her firm, and said goodbye to the version of herself that lived for other people's praise. The street was quiet. A few kids laughed somewhere in the distance. My phone buzzed on the side table. "Megan. Brunch at my place. Chosen family only. I didn't bring a gift. I brought peace. And this time, it was enough." She opened the door in fuzzy socks and a Christmas sweater that said, "Resting Grinch Face." The snow gathered behind her, but the inside glowed warm, orange light bouncing off pine garlands and candles. Someone was playing jazz. Someone else was trying to convince a toddler not to feed the dog a cinnamon roll. I stepped inside and handed her a small bouquet of winter greenery and pine cones tied with a fraying ribbon I'd found in my junk drawer. She raised an eyebrow. "No gift?" she teased. "I brought peace," I said, "and I don't wear that anymore." We smiled, but hers lingered longer, like she understood it wasn't just a line. Inside, the noise wrapped around me like a quilt. Loose laughter, forks clinking, stories being told, and half finished. No one asked about Chloe or my parents. No one tried to pull answers out of me. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was preparing for something to go wrong. These weren't people I shared blood with, but they were mine. When I got back home, the silence didn't bother me. I walked through each room like I was introducing myself to it again. The office was now both workspace and sanctuary. The living room had a new lamp in the corner, its warm yellow glow, a reminder that not everything has to be dramatic to be healing. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon from the potpourri Megan had gifted me, and the drawers were exactly the way I'd arranged them. No one had moved the spatulas. No one had told me I didn't need two colanders. I lit a candle near the front window and sat on the floor with a notebook in my lap. The sun filtered through the stained glass amber, teal, and that single triangle of red. It painted the hardwood in soft light. Not dramatic, just gentle. Just enough. A few days later, I checked my mailbox and found a card. It was from Professor Laskin, my American literature professor from college. I hadn't heard from him in over a decade. Inside was a simple note in blue ink. "You always had a spine made of story. I hope you're writing again." Tucked inside was a small quote, typed on a slip of cream paper. "Freedom is not the absence of memories. It's knowing they don't own you anymore." I pinned it to my corkboard in the office, right beside affirmations from the women in the support group I'd posted in that night at Nora's. Things like, "You're allowed to close doors." "Some survival looks like silence." That same afternoon, another letter came. This one is from my father. The envelope was heavy, like the words inside had weight. His handwriting was as rigid as I remembered, perfectly straight, too neat to feel human. The letter was short. "I shouldn't have let things get that far. I was trying to protect what I built. I didn't realize how much of it was yours." That was it. No apology, no ownership. Just enough words to sound like regret, not enough to truly feel it. I read it once. Then I filed it away in the back of a drawer beside other things I didn't need to carry anymore. Not all doors have to be closed, but some don't need to be reopened. On New Year's Eve, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the front steps in that same blanket. The night was quiet. No wild parties, no music booming through the walls, just a few fireworks cracking over the treetops and the echo of laughter from somewhere down the street. I whispered into the air, "They tried to take my house." Then I smiled. "But they couldn't take the woman who built it." The sky settled back into calm, the kind that only comes when you've let go of needing a resolution from the people who hurt you. I stood, walked inside, and locked the doorknob out of fear, but out of peace. This home doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be mine. And now, finally, it is. Sometimes I think about that phrase Chloe used to say whenever things got uncomfortable. "We're family, we don't keep score." But scorekeeping was never the issue. It was silence, dismissal, the belief that someone else's version of the story would always be louder, more believable. They mistook my quiet for permission. But I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was building. Every memory. I reorganized every drawer. Every photo I reframed. Brick by brick. Boundaries, I've learned, don't make you selfish. They make you free. The snow melted slowly that January. Each day, a little more grass showed through the frost, and each morning, the air felt slightly less sharp. I didn't mark the days anymore. I didn't need to. Time no longer felt like something I had to survive. A few weeks into the new year, I found myself rearranging my bookshelves not because they needed it, but because I wanted to touch every spine, to remind myself I was here, that this space was mine, and that I didn't need to rush back to who I used to be. That morning, I added one more photo to the hallway and Megan with mugs in our hands and blankets wrapped around our shoulders, fireworks glowing behind us. I had smiled without realizing it. Someone had caught it. A few days later, I got a call from Officer Sanders at the precinct. "We've identified the sender of the photo," he said. It was the man Vernon had used to sign the false applications. The same man who'd done contract work on the house years ago. He'd mailed it after being questioned by state investigators. There's no legal threat, but you were right. It was personal. I know. It always was. I hung up and sat quietly. The sun was coming in just right through the stained glass, laying long stripes of that night, Megan and I drove out to a small cabin rental. It was a nice little idea, something to get away. I didn't realize our gloved hands. "You good?" she asked as we watched the snow blow through bare branches. I didn't answer right away. Just let the wind speak first. Then I nodded. I think I finally understand what peace feels like. That night, by the fireplace, she asked something I wasn't expecting. "Do you think you'll tell the full story someday? Not just the legal parts, the human ones." I thought about the judge's voice, the courtroom stillness, Isabel's tight mouth, and my father's letter. I thought about the envelope with the red X and the quote pinned to my corkboard. "I already did," I said softly. Back home, the mailbox was quiet again. The kind of quiet that doesn't make you brace, but lets you breathe. No more cards, no more letters, just a grocery flyer and a postcard from a friend in Oregon. On the back, "You were always the bravest of us." I pinned that one up too. Over the next month, the support forum I'd posted in began sharing stories again. New ones, raw ones, unfinished ones. I read them every night before bed. Sometimes I commented, sometimes I didn't. One woman wrote, "My brother forged our mom's will. No one believed me." Another said, "They sold the house while I was in the hospital." And this one stopped me cold. "They didn't just try to take my home. They tried to erase me from it." I wrote her back. "I know what that feels like. But you're still here, and they can't take what's yours, not really. Not if you hold the line." It wasn't poetry, but it was true. In February, I planted the first seeds in my window boxes. The soil was stubborn from frost, but I worked slowly, palms pressed into the earth, breath fogging the glass. Inside, every corner of the house had begun to shift, not dramatically, but quietly. The way a tree doesn't move in front of your eyes, but still grows inches each season. I repainted the guest room in a soft green. Bought myself a new reading chair. Replaced the synthetic lavender plugins with eucalyptus candles I made from scratch. And in the evenings, I wrote. Not about them. About me. About resilience that doesn't come in roars but in whispers. About the kind of strength that doesn't need to be proven, only lived. Megan came over one night and noticed the envelope still tucked into the back of the drawer, the one from my father. "You ever gonna burn that too?" she asked, half joking. I shook my head. Number. Some things don't need to be destroyed, just forgotten. When spring finally came, the cherry blossoms outside my window bloomed for the first time in years. I opened the window. Let the breeze in. Let me feel proud. In a quiet home reclaimed from betrayal, I found something more lasting than justice. I found peace. This wasn't the kind of peace that arrived with a gavel strike or a legal declaration, though those things mattered. This was a deeper kind of peace that settles when your truth finally takes up space. They tried to take more than a house. They tried to erase the woman who built it. And for a while, I thought they'd succeeded. But piece by piece, photo by photo, I rebuilt. Not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself I still belonged here. Family doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes the most painful cuts come from familiar hands. But healing? That came from the unexpected places, from late-night messages in support groups, from a neighbor's quiet nod, from the steady presence of someone who stayed. Boundaries aren't walls. They're invitations to come. Corrector, not come at all. And forgiveness? It's not about letting someone in. Sometimes it's just about letting something go. This story isn't a revenge tale. It's a homecoming. To myself, to the voice I stopped silencing, the life I stopped shrinking. And if you've ever felt dismissed, invisible, or overwritten in your own story, I hope you know this. You can start again. You can draw the line. You can write the ending they never saw coming. Even if it's quiet. Even if no one claps. Because sometimes the softest steps are the strongest ones. And sometimes peace doesn't look like victory. It looks like a porch light left on for the woman who finally came home.